Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Very special guest, good friend joining us, a return guest. It's been a while since he's been on. We got a lot to talk about. Board certified internist and addiction medicine specialist, host of Ask Dr. Drew on Rumble, YouTube, and X, which can be seen and heard Tuesday and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Pacific time and Wednesdays at 4 Pacific time. It's Dr. Drew. Great to see you, my friend.
Paul, it's great to see you. And let's see, it's Tuesday afternoon as we're recording this. And
Yeah.
let's see, I was last year, then once, oh, 6 years ago. Took 6 years to get back here. So
It's
what the
like,
hell? And I've been thinking
yeah.
about it for 3 years. So here we are.
Here we are. So we're going to go back and talk about when you were first on, or when you were on last, and kind of what we talked about. It was in the middle of COVID and everything else, and then sort of how life has transpired since then. This is going to be like a 5-hour podcast, basically,
All right,
and
good, good.
and
Why stop? Why stop it at 2 hours?
yeah, exactly. But no, when we talked about when you were on last and we talked, it was in the middle of COVID, and sort of there were, everybody, it was a crazy time where there were theories going all over the place about what was going on with COVID and the reaction to COVID and how the government was dealing with COVID. And so let's start at that there as a jumping off point
And
of
there was,
how
wasn't there
we talked
another
about.
guest on with us that day? Was there some, am I
Uh,
remembering that correctly?
it
You had somebody
may
else
have
in there?
been, may have been. I can't remember. Well, no, I think it was the producer that was with us and kind of
Okay.
jumped in on
Okay.
conversation. Yeah.
That could be. And
Yeah.
I have this vivid memory of you just smiling and laughing at me, perhaps knowingly, as I was screaming.
No, no, I was like everybody else. I was searching and trying to figure out. I felt like, we were all in a perfect shitstorm together.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, yes, I kind of knew that you were like, no,
Well,
no.
Paul and I talked last night. I told him that I am looking for every opportunity to apologize. First of all, to figure out what I got right and what I got wrong, and where I got something wrong, to immediately correct it and apologize for it. I would like to see many, many other people doing the same thing. And I
Yeah.
think it would save a lot of time and energy if people that are sort of in the crosshairs. I don't care about government hearings and Senate hearings and nonsense like that. I don't care about legal retribution, though there are a lot of people that want that kind of thing. I would like people to go, here are the things I got wrong. Here's why I got them wrong. I'm so sorry. I apologize. And here's what I'm going to do in the future to correct that. And
Mm.
that would go such a long way. I have gone around apologizing wherever I can. I had to apologize to Naomi Wolf, right? Because she started with early on the vaccine and ovarian deposition, the deposits of the lipid nanoparticles and effects on fertility. And she was championing women's causes as she always does. And she specifically said, and Drew, it's making so many women's periods irregular. And I was like, now women's periods. I mean, come on. The wind blows wrong. I was so dismissive and so pathetic and so sexist. And it turns out it's exactly what was happening. She was 100% right. And there's mechanisms now for it. And I was so pathetically sexist and dismissive. I called her onto my show, the Ask Dr. Drew. I said, I want to apologize. I'm going to fall. I cannot apologize enough. I'm adult. This is pathetic. I will check myself in the future. And this has been a learning thing for me about my toxic masculinity, or at least my male
Right.
perspective on things.
Well, I
And as
mean,
a physician, that's inexcusable, right? And
yes.
so apologies. I also called Jenny McCarthy, and I
Okay,
got
let's
her.
back up. Let's
Right,
back up on that for a
right,
second, though, on Naomi, right? And
right.
and this is what I love about you is, your honesty and your frankness and only good intentions. I don't know you as somebody with some hidden agenda, some
No,
hidden
no,
political agenda, or any of
no.
that.
I don't even know what that
You
is.
you wear your heart you wear your heart on your sleeve, and you're obviously very, very bright and great at what you do. Explain why, because you've had time, as you mentioned, to sort of look back on all of this, as we all have, right? Like,
Yeah,
and I think it's admirable. I think we need to be sort of in apology mode in our society generally. We were talking about this over dinner last night,
yeah,
and we'll get into this a little bit down the road in this conversation, but sort of like we all need to lower the temperature,
Yep,
right?
for sure.
Whether it's issues around COVID or any health mandates,
Right.
whether it's political issues. So why do you think you were so dismissive at that time of her and what she was proposing or
Because
espousing?
at that point, I had concerns about the vaccine, but they were different than her concerns, I would say. And she was really ringing the bell loud on this one front, and I was sort of like, yes, the lipid nanoparticles move around. I'm always worried about throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm worried about the extremes on either side, and so I get attacked by everybody because of that. And I
Right.
take a long time to get to my opinions, and some of that now is because of the excesses of early COVID, where I was screaming about what I thought was happening, what I thought I saw, and I was partly right and partly wrong. And everyone gets wrong what I got wrong and wrong about what I got right too. So what I was seeing was the press whipping a frenzy, and I knew how the press worked, and I happened to be in New York when things were breaking out. It was 2019, and you and I did a pod, and I
Mm.
did like the Fox News. I did all these daily local shows. I don't remember what I was promoting or anything.
Hmm.
And they were like, end of the world. I'm like, you have no business talking about this. Shut up. I just kept saying, shut up, shut up. And I made a discipline of following it with the following statement. And whatever has been clipped of me saying, shut up, it's not a big deal, relax, 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 we'll find out. I was hubristic in my attack on the press. I never imagined the government was involved with it. That still, to me, is like an asteroid hitting the planet. I'm like, what? I can't believe that happened. But
Mm.
that was a big part of what happened to me in particular. In fact, we're trying to track down the particulars of who went after me, and it's not good. It's
Mm.
not good, and it's
Mm.
not press.
Mm.
So anyway, um, I was hubristic. I had irrational certitude, which is what you were
Mm.
talking about in terms of cooling the heat down. You
Mm.
should, when it comes to medical science in particular, there is certitude about nothing. You have to be rationally uncertain at all times and
Hmm.
reassessing and looking, updating your priors and being Bayesian in your thinking, and just be humble as you try to ascend to a contemplation of approximations of the truth, because you can
Hmm.
never get to the truth. You can't.
Hmm.
It's all a probabilistic equation. We
Right.
know, Heisenberg taught us that everything is built on probabilities, and certainly in biology, everything is probabilistic.
Hmm.
So I was hubristic and I was screaming about the press. It made it look like I was dismissing this thing as a nothing, which I really was not prepared to do yet. I just was angry with the press. And I followed every single outburst with the following statement. And it's the thing I got most wrong, and the thing you will never see out there because everybody clipped it off, which
Mm.
was, just listen to the CDC, listen to Dr. Fauci. I worked with these guys during the AIDS epidemic and H1N1. They know what they're doing. They'll get us through this. Just listen to those guys. And I would say the following thing: let Dr. Fauci be your North Star. I said that 1,000 times. And that I got wrong. That's the one thing I got wrong for sure. And nobody knows I
Right.
said that. So
Right.
it's kind of interesting. They think I
Right.
got wrong the minimizing of the heat around the virus. And what
Right.
I kept saying, Paul, I don't know if you remember this, I kept saying, we just had a pandemic 10 years earlier. We had
Right. I do remember you saying that.
H1N1. It
Hmm.
killed 300,000 people. I had both H1N1 and Alpha or Delta COVID. H1N1 was a more brutal illness. It was
Hmm.
brutal. I was
Hmm.
sick for weeks, and it killed 300,000 people. And what I kept saying was, you don't even know it happened. The
Hmm.
Obama administration elected not to make a big deal out of it appropriately. They managed it well. We made it through
Why was it appropriate that they didn't make a big deal
because
out of it?
creating a panic and mandating a fantasy of 6 foot distancing or masking up between these fantasies that we leapt into would have had
Mm.
no impact on that pandemic.
Hmm.
None, zero.
Hmm.
And probably had no impact on this pandemic as well. But
Right.
we went into this weird panic mode where you gotta do something, gotta do something, gotta do something. And we made horrible. I talked to Redfield and Francis Collins. I've talked to all these guys. I've talked to people in the room when they invented 6 feet distancing. And
Tell
it was
people who Redfield is, and tell
this
people some of these.
Redfield was the head of the CDC, and Francis Collins
Mhm.
was head of the NIH. Do you have that right, or have it backwards? These were the guys making the decisions. And a guy named Paul Alexander was the first guy to alert me about this. And he said it was made up. It was just completely made up out of thin air. This is
The
an
made up
era,
being the made up being
the
the
six
what?
feet distancing, and
Right.
then the masking. You remember they went back and forth on,
Mm.
because they were making that up as they went too. There was
Hmm.
no evidence for it. Now,
Hmm.
you asked me something last night. I want to clarify. Wearing an N95 mask fully sealed around your mouth, worn
Mm.
perfectly, never taken off and never unsealed, that will make a difference. I did not see one person doing that during the pandemic. I
Well, no,
saw
you also saw people like with a mask, and then they run it. They decide, oh, they're at Starbucks and they want to order their coffee, so they pull it down and order their coffee, and then put
zero
it
effect
back
now.
up. Yeah.
Completely reverse the effect. Or
Yeah.
you're wearing a mask. You have to wear a mask walking into a restaurant, then you take it off when you sit down. It's a complete fallacy.
Yeah, well, that's how I got
And
it
then,
at a
and then
comedy club.
all the people with it down around their mouth. That was the one
Right.
I liked,
Right.
because the virus enters through the nose. That's how it
Right.
gets in. Right?
Right.
It's like it was so crazy. I told
Right.
Paul, I said, last night, you would have done the same thing if you just said, I'll tell you what, I want everybody stand on one foot and jump up and down for 20 minutes. So I want you to do, and that will make a big. It's the exact same thing. And it shows the insanity of
Yeah.
centralizing authority when it comes to medicine. It's a terrible idea.
Well, but I mean, you're never going to get away. You're never going to do away with that. We've had centralized authority for decades and decades and decades. So I mean, so
Around medicine,
yeah,
you
well, I mean,
absolutely not. No one has ever
well,
involved themselves
what is
other
the
than
CDC and the NIH and
they are
what are those?
advisory, Paul. They
Well,
send out bulletins and go, here's what we suggest you keep an eye on. They
but
don't
that's not
tell me
how.
what to do
But listen,
ever.
but look at my reaction as a citizen. That's not how I read them as a citizen, and I think most citizens don't read them. I mean, look, you have to
Wait,
understand.
Paul.
Hang
Paul,
on,
stop.
hang on. No. Where you sit, we're not disagreeing. I'm trying to clarify something. Where you
Yeah.
sit, you're in it. It's what you do for a living. You
Yeah.
understand the distinction between they're an advisory board versus people that you should listen to.
Yeah.
To the average guy who's just trying to get through his day to make sure he's got enough money to pay his heating bill and his kid needs braces, okay, and he's got to get his other kid to soccer practice. The nuance of what an advisory board is versus non-advisory versus a mandate, that gets lost on people. And I think we who do this for a living in terms of sort of have media access and convey information through shows like this need to remember that they don't and I say they, including me, don't necessarily know that distinction. So when they hear NIH says this or CDC says that, a guy driving his truck to go do his plumbing work doesn't go, oh, well, that's just an advisory board and whatever. They're like, oh, well, they're the guys that run everything in this area, so I'm going to listen to them. That's how people consume this information, Drew.
Right. And
You have to remember
that's
that.
a new idea. That's a brand new idea. Throughout the history of medicine in America, the doctor's mandate is to protect the patient, make the decision on behalf of the patient, giving that individual's wishes, philosophy on life, family systems, what's going on medically for them, that there's one person responsible to make the call for the patient in front of them. One, and that is the physician. That's it. And that still exists. The problem is things have bled in that have adulterated that quite a bit. Insurance companies, number one, Medicare, number two, state regulations, number three, and what else has gotten it? Oh yeah, and in the hospital systems now, hospitals get involved because hospitals employ doctors now, and they give them clinical pathways that they have to follow. If they step outside of those pathways, they have a bureaucratic process they have to go through. So it has been adulterated.
Also politics. So I know someone who's a doctor, okay, and he was hell bent that COVID was bullshit. This is a very legitimate doctor, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you could see that he started to drink the political Kool-Aid. Okay, okay, and so let's not pretend that doctors are immune to this sort of what I'll call sort of cancer in our society, where everything's politicized now.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why are you drinking out of a red mug, Paul?
Oh
What is
yeah.
that? Everything,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So there's that layer too that should not ever be forgotten. And I don't know if you can go back. I don't know if you can undo this, right? Like,
Yeah.
it just seems now that it's the politicalization of medicine is going to be with us forever now. What do you think? I mean, because
I
I didn't.
think when I think about those kinds of observations, my instinct is immediately go to our training as a scientist.
Right.
And science training is weak right now. Weak.
How so?
Most people aren't even trained in the scientific method. When I
Mm.
sat down in 1980 for my medical school interview, at the end of it, the physician goes, "Describe the scientific method to me." And I laid it out. I'd been deeply schooled in the scientific method. And he goes, "You're the first student to be able to answer that question in 15 years." And I was like, "Oh shit, we are in trouble." Since then, I have judged competitions and things, in terms of paper, people submit papers for these competitions. And
Hmm.
I always ask and they're all convoluted and they're not based in actual science. They're sort of data driven analysis thing. And I go, did you ever contemplate a null hypothesis did you, before you set up your study? Didn't have any idea what I was talking about. Here's what science can do. It is a Brett Weinstein ran up to me today and said, "This is it. This is the problem." Because I know it is, because I had such great science training and I can see the weakness out there. He
Hmm.
said, essentially the scientific method is a delicate instrument, and it can do one thing. It can tell you whether the null hypothesis is informative or non-informative. That's it. And
Okay.
then you
Explain to
reproduce that
people that.
over and over and over again. And thank God, Bhattacharya just yesterday said he's going to go on a reproducibility campaign where that is going to determine what is acceptable discipline. And I thought, oh, that's good. That is a first step.
So when you say scientific method, can you elaborate on a little bit for listeners and viewers
So
that sort
scientific
of.
method is something invented by Francis Bacon 400 years ago. And it is essentially you look at nature, you come up with a hypothesis that explains nature, you develop a clever way to query nature. We call that an experiment. You collect your data and you subject that data to a statistical analysis. And that statistical, and by the way, based on your hypothesis, you formulate a null hypothesis. It is not the case that my theory is correct. And the null hypothesis after statistical analysis is either informative or non-informative. And if it is informative and you can repeat that many times and it continues to be informative, your hypothesis now becomes a theory. Never a fact, never the truth, never the science. It becomes a theory. And that theory is subject to constant analysis and change.
Right. And so that is something that is lacking now for some reason
It's not, the
in sort of.
undergraduates aren't being trained. They're just being
And why and
it's
why
sort of
is that?
because I don't because it's too hard to train. I remember I took it's hard to train people in really good science, and they're being given sort of a language class. Biochemistry is now a language class. I was trained in the thermodynamic forces that shape protein folding and things as an introductory biochemistry. And I remember I took my biochemistry question sets. We had question sets every week. We had to take home. It took 40 hours to complete.
Hmm.
And I brought it to my biochemistry professor in medical school. I was like, I thought the biochemistry course was pathetic. And she goes, "Oh, I could never give students this. I could never do it." And I go, "Why?" She goes, "Well, these are graduate level questions." And I go, "I'm in graduate school now. I would like some graduate level training. What is going on here?" And that was
God, that's
40 years ago. And things have deteriorated since then, believe me. So we are now. There are plenty of physicians that are very smart and already kind of have a good analytical system in their head. I had to be trained in it. Mine did not occur naturally.
right. And so in sort of being on this apology tour, if you will, you've you've had time to be introspective, which I wish more people would be. And I think that this is really admirable that you're doing this, because I think you're leading sort of with an idea that I think is really necessary. And we talked about this last night over dinner as well.
Mm.
In terms of this, talk about rational certitude. Go into that a little bit
Irrational
more.
certitude.
Irrational
Irrational
certitude,
certitude.
right? I'm sorry, uh, because it sounds counterintuitive to the average person, to the layperson. But explain that a little bit, and
Well,
explain why.
just think about,
And then
you think
go ahead.
about the scientific method.
Right.
You first have deep humility for what you're doing. You can't presuppose, you can't bias, you can't anticipate good results. You have to have humility before nature. And to the extent that you arrive at something that looks good, you have to constantly be uncertain. It looks
Mm,
good. It looks true. I'm not sure. I can never be sure. And that's the method. That's the method. And if you have irrational certitude, it's irrational. You can't, particularly with biology, you can't be certain of anything.
mm,
It's all probabilities, and it's all sort of trending. That's why you need physicians to use their judgment. You go to a
mm,
doctor not for their fund of knowledge. That goes without saying. You go for the application or his or her judgment to make the right call for you, for your special circumstances of your presentation, who you are at that moment, your age, your religion, all of it has to be called into question, and you
hmm
make the call that is the best thing for that patient. That's why there will never be truly just AI physicians. It just can't happen. There's too many variables, and they're too kind of emotional. They're too squishy,
mm.
and you got to
Well,
make that
wait,
call.
what's too emotional? What's too squishy? What do you mean by that?
The context for the decisions you're making. So I mean, just let me think of one I've made recently. Uh, all right, here's one. Um, uh, I have a patient come in with tuberculosis.
Hmm
He's treated for tuberculosis. He gets hepatic necrosis. He gets life-threatening liver injury from the the medication for the tuberculosis. Now what? Well, he's got to have his TB treatment. So we formulate a brand new sort of protocol that was just being thought of. I, called all the experts and we put it together. It worked. Patient is had full COVID vaccine and had his second booster within a month. Gets COVID. Now, what do I do? The guy's got advanced liver problems. He's with tuberculosis. Do I use Paxlovid? Do I put him in the hospital? And and family spielkas, as we say in Italian. Family is upset. They would go wild if we put him in the hospital, and with anxiety. And he's stoic, and he sort of wants as little as possible done. What do I do? What do I do with that guy? Well,
Right.
I decided, and it was one of the nuanced things about the vaccine for me. I thought that vaccine gives me a little bit of safety, where I don't have to treat this. He's getting sick, but he's not that sick, and I have
Mhm.
confidence that vaccine did something. And I wrote it out, and in 2 days he was fine. His liver repaired. The TB we treated successfully. It was fine. By the AI might have decided something completely
Right,
different. It
right.
would have
It
upended his life, upended his family's life. It's just these are the
it doesn't
kinds of
have the
decisions
ability
you.
to be subjective in the moment, sort of
Yeah, yeah.
pivot, sort of. Why do you think that it sounds like, well, you've admitted this lack of irrational certitude, and you've come back to that, but it seems like it's almost a systemic problem. Why do you think that you lost your way on that, if for lack of a better term? And generally, it seems like in our society, science, medical science, whatever you want to call it, has moved in that direction, away
Which
from that a
direction?
little bit,
Which
away
direction?
from irrational certitude. You said it's key to have irrational certitude, right?
Yeah,
Isn't
they
that
have
what you're?
not. They have not. It is
But you
the
said
bureaucracy
you.
has. The bureaucracy has. And the bureaucracy has none of this. The bureaucracy has its own interest, and bureaucracy is the enemy in medicine. Again, that super
Be more
the
specific. When you
further you
say
get away
bureaucracy,
from
give me an example of that.
the further you get away from me helping a patient, that's your
Right,
most efficient unit. And then
right.
me as the clinician, I have to be properly trained, and I have to be properly motivated. I have to care. And if you
Mm,
have that, and you have a patient who's also motivated and informed, it does not get better than that. That's your most
Right.
efficient unit. If
Right.
I have a hospital administrator saying, we only use tocilizumab, or we only have this, or it costs too much to do that, or the insurance company won't. Now we've adulterated the equation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And did we lose that ability to have a rational certitude during COVID? And if
Oh
so,
yeah. Oh
how?
my God. Oh my
You
God.
give
I am the
it, well,
science. Those words that I've like never heard in my entire training, entire life. I am the science. I am science. That is wacky cuckoo stuff.
yeah.
And I
And
understand it was
why do you think that happened? Why do you think
politics.
that?
You're right. That people got weird and scared, and then they got angry, and then they started defending themselves, and they ended up defending things that were crazy, crazy, crazy. So let me go back to my apology. So my
Okay.
my apology is I should not have been so angry and hubristic. And
Mm,
even though my aim was at the press, it caused me, and so anger may be part of the problem here, right?
mm-hmm.
It caused me to not update my priors the way I should.
Right.
Finally, I did. It came to me. I remember I was on a pod and somebody said, New York's getting hit pretty hard. I went, oh my God, where have I been for the last 3 weeks? I have to like pay attention to how this thing's playing out. And I did not pay attention to the R naught of this thing. I did not pay attention to the aerosolized mechanism of distribution, which, by the way, is 30 to 60 feet
Mm-hmm.
for infectivity. So
Mm-hmm.
not 6 feet. 6 feet is a nothing. It's made up. It's
So
zero.
meaning meaning for distancing to be effective, we would have had to stay 30 to 60 feet apart.
Right. The only alternative to that would be very good ventilation. Move the air.
Mm.
The
Right.
air, and we did the opposite. We put up plexiglass that stopped the air from moving. It's
Mm.
unbelievable. And we closed things down and we shut the out. Just so crazy. We should have been
Yeah.
opening windows. We should have been doing things outside.
Right.
And the reality is we should have had events out of doors. And it's okay to go to a demonstration with 30,000 people, but it was not okay to say 30,000 people is in a concentrated environment is good, but your church parking lot is no good. That's insanity now. So
Right.
it just was insane. And it just shows how self-interested bureaucracy is, how centralized authority runs amok.
Well,
Uh,
I think part of this for me, again, not don't I don't have your expertise obviously, but as an average citizen who stays up on things and tries to, kind of be on top of what's going on, the sense of it was there was a panic within the government
mm-hmm.
because there was a panic within society, which was understandable. Uh, yeah, some media generated, but it was still like it was legitimate. I had COVID before vaccines. It sucked. It was
I
really
did
hard
too. It
on
was
me.
awful. It
It
was
was
awful.
awful. Okay, so
But
like,
I knew.
hang on a second. But like, but so like, I want to talk about the media component in a minute, right?
Mm,
But I
mm,
think what happens is when you're in positions of power, the government is freaking out literally like a child and doesn't understand really everything that's going on. And rather than just admit, and I'm not giving an excuse for the government, but rather admit, look, we don't know, we're figuring this out. They sit in a room and start to go, well, let's just come up with some hard and fast things that
yeah.
sound very official,
Yeah.
and it'll calm people down. And maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong. I don't think people were sitting there with bad intentions.
No, of
I
course
just
not.
think that just like that, the population at large panicked, the people in power within the government structure, and particularly within the medical community, the medical government community, if you lack of a better term, panicked and just started feeling like they had to come up with some answers and started throwing stuff against the wall, and whatever stuck, that's what they went with.
I think that there was a proclivity in that direction. There certainly were totalitarian instincts that were unheard of prior to this.
Right.
And they had been practicing for pandemics. And they decided that although lockdown was something they thought was a bad idea in their practice, in the run up, and when they had, but there was a whole world now of pandemic professionals that was never present before. And this was their moment. This was it. We're going to do it. We're going to show how what we've been preparing for is going to work, going to
Mhm.
save lives. And we had a counterexample. We had a state that had a different instinct, and it was a case example. I mean, we had the evidence. Florida was a case study. It didn't make any meaningful difference. And I sat through, I don't know if you remember, but DeSantis brought in a panel of experts. Bhattacharya was one of them, interestingly. And he brought in, all these experts and sat through a day. And Bhattacharya said it was incredible because DeSantis read all the articles he a facility in understanding the medical literature that it was sent to him. And I watched that symposium. And at the end of it, he just went, I just don't see any evidence that justifies me locking this state down or following even the 6 feet distancing thing. There's no evidence that this is a right thing to do. And all these, there was a couple of Nobel Prize winners on the panel. They went, yeah, we don't see it either. And they did
And
something
so why do you think
worked? And that became, oh, we have to smush Florida and dissent, rather than look at them as something that an opportunity. It was, we have to don't pay attention to those guys. They're idiots. They're killing people down there.
Yeah, I think what bled into that was that that's where politics got in the way of so the people in the DeSantises of the world that were sort of coming up with this other approach to this had sort of invited this skepticism because they were so aggressively against any other alternative treatment other than their own because they politicized it. So you have to be careful what you wish for, right? Like, I understand we could sit there and go, poor Florida, they were squished. Everybody picked on it, they were whatever. But I was there too, and I saw it all too. And I do remember that there was not really, Florida and DeSantis were not very open-minded when it came to what I'll call the mainstream view of how to deal with this. They were very dismissive of it, and they very much politicized it. And so when you do that and say, wait, what you're suggesting, people over here, is absolutely absurd, and I will have none of it, but here's my thing. And then those people, what is human nature going to be like? They're going to go, oh, well, you're shutting me down? Then I'm going to shut you down, DeSantis. And it became children in a schoolyard. And that is what frustrated a lot of Americans, because at that point, it was about people's own agenda in power, politics, and not truly having the best interests of the American public at heart. What should have happened was Republicans and Democrats, scientists of all types, should have sat in a room and kept politics outside the room and really tried to figure out what is in the best effing interest of this country and saving lives right now.
Correct.
And we both know that didn't happen on both sides of the aisle. And that's where this thing went off the rails, and it's still off the rails. Like, I don't understand, okay, how someone could be carte blanche against vaccines, but when they were 2 or 3 or whatever age, you get measles shots and smallpox and everything else, you got those shots. They did fine for you. Now they're bad. Like, so show me some evidence that this stuff is bad and I'll go for it. So it's sort of like, I don't know how you ever undo the genie's out of the bottle in terms of the politics and medicine and healthcare and the next pandemic. I don't think it's gotten any better. Like, I don't see, if there's a pandemic next week, I think it's going to be two sides going at each other from a political standpoint. It's going to be a mess.
Terrible.
And so I understand about Florida.
Something awful. You're not just explaining something. You're describing something horrific.
Yeah.
And people were arrested in California because they went paddleboarding by themselves,
Right.
or they laid down on the beach next to somebody. These are insane.
I had a friend that got a ticket in California for being in a park, and he was too close and he got a ticket. I know, it was crazy.
It's insane. And it went on for years.
Right.
I'm okay. When it started, I was like, all right, we're preparing for the worst. I'm a good citizen. I'm going to get behind Governor Newsom. He's preparing for the worst. It became more and more punitive, more and more totalitarian. They destroyed lives, destroyed a generation. An entire high school experience was eviscerated. 8 to 15-year-olds were we are still dealing with the repercussions of that, and will for many years.
Well, it had to be somewhere in the middle. It has to be somewhere in the middle, right? I don't think every single thing that the liberal government, the liberal not I'm going to say media, but the liberal side of government did was terrible and wrong. I think that what problem was happening is that there were political reactions to each other. So one side was saying A, so the other side was going to do B. They did B, then they did C. They
Once,
did
hang
C,
on a
then they
second,
did.
Paul. You're mischaracterizing things. One side was saying, look at Florida. There's an example there. Please don't ruin my life. Don't take my freedoms away. Don't
Hmm.
mandate things in my body I don't want. And the other side was saying, fuck you, shut up. I'm going to destroy your business. I'm going to shut you down. I'm putting barbed wire around your
Right?
business. You get your arm out. And if you don't, I hope you die
Mhm.
because we're not going to give you a hospital bed. That's
Right.
insane. That is
It is insane.
insane.
Yes.
The
And
one
but
side was
there's also,
insane, and the other
yeah,
side was just, hubristic. But
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
insanity of destroying people's lives, destroying kids, mandating that people put something in their body, and this is like wild shit. And
Yeah.
it's just, I understand,
So what about
strongly agree.
the
China does not have mandates.
but what about
Cuba,
the obligation? What about the obligation? Like if you go out into society, like you have a right, like to not get a measles shot, right?
yep,
But if you get measles, if you make that choice, then you also have an obligation to not expose yourself to the rest of society. Because here's my thing: you have a right to do whatever you want with your body until what you do with your body has an effect on my life and my
correct,
wife and my
correct,
child.
correct.
And then my response is, fuck you and the horse you rode in on.
Okay, well, I
And
assume you and
that's
your
where, hang
child.
on, hang on, hang on, hang on, hang on. And that's where we've lost our way.
Right.
And I don't
So
care if you're, hang on, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or a communist or whatever you are. You have a right to do whatever you want with your life.
yeah,
But you do have, here's the news flash for everybody.
correct.
We're living in a world with other people.
Yes,
So with that comes with the responsibility to be responsible with yourself vis-a-vis other people. And so
Paul.
I don't think anybody has that
Paul, just
right,
listen. I've
right?
never met a human being who did not agree with that,
Right,
ever. So
right.
you're accusing people, you're reading their minds, you're accusing people of having uncaring or sinister intent. I've never met that person.
No,
What
I'm
I've
not saying
met,
they
what
have
I've
sinister
met
intent.
is people who go, you know what? I don't feel comfortable with this thing. If we get the measles, trust me, we will keep this kid home. And
Mm,
everyone else in her class is vaccinated, and so they're going to
hmm.
be okay.
Mm,
These are the kinds of decision making I'm seeing people make.
right,
Now, could they harm somebody? They have to take that into account. And they have to be, that's between
yeah,
them and God and whoever they hurt. But
right.
nobody have I ever met said, I don't give a shit what happens to everybody else. I'm protecting it. They might
No,
say,
I don't
I have
think
to protect my
no, we
family
agree.
first.
Yeah, I agree. I think we agree. I don't think people sit there and have sinister intents. All I'm saying is that, people have to be conscious of any decisions that they make.
Yeah.
Those decisions don't have just not exclusionary effects to them, but have
Yes.
an effect on people around them. And yeah,
Correct.
okay, you can say everybody in the class is vaccinated and whatever, but it's not a foolproof system, right? So you do run the risk if your child gets measles or whatever that you expose somebody else who didn't want to be exposed to it. That is a risk, but
Mhm.
I agree with you. I think we agree. Like I don't think people sit home and say F the world and whatever.
Mhm.
I just think this gets back to a larger point that we were talking about last night at dinner, but like I think that we just have to remember that we're in a society with other human beings and
I don't know anybody that doesn't think
we
that
have
way,
to
but you have
find
to be
some middle ground.
careful,
Well,
Paul.
I mean, wait a minute.
You're,
No, hang
you're
on a second.
saying
There are
Florida doesn't give a shit about other people. They don't care if they kill
No, I
people.
didn't say
No,
anything
they
about
do. I
Florida.
was down there. They cared a lot.
Hang on, hang on.
So
Hang on. I never said those words. I
I
never
know
said
people
Florida
do
doesn't.
that. That's the point. You have to be very
I'm not.
careful.
I
You have
didn't say that.
you have to
I'm
start
saying
with
that
you
if
have to start
I'm
with
saying
everybody cares about everybody. Everybody. I've never met people that don't want other people to thrive.
right.
Everybody wants that. The question
Yeah.
is who has the right mechanism to optimize that and to diminish harm and to do it well for everybody so
Right.
everybody thrives. That's what
Right.
everybody wants. And when you start saying you want this or you want to kill people or you don't care about my kid getting measles, we jumped off the then. There people are not like that. They care
No, I know that,
about
but if
everybody
someone,
does.
but if I have a child, we agree, by the way. But let's just to be clear, if I have a child in school who's 6 years old, and someone else has a child, and that they don't want that child vaccinated for measles or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like I, as the parent, of the child that is vaccinated, if I voice a concern that my child might be exposed because of the choice that you made with your child, which is your right, it
Mhm.
seems like sometimes two people who are parents of that child, that if you say, well, I'm concerned about my child's safety, that you're being then accused of trying to shut down that other person's right not to be vaccinated. And
Mm.
that's not what people are saying, Drew.
No,
What
I
people
agree.
are saying is, it's okay. It's just like, do you remember when it was, I think it was in North Carolina, when the transgender stuff really started to kick in? And there was a little girl, a little boy, sort of identified with the other gender,
Mm.
wanted to go into the restroom that was not the
I
gender,
remember that.
and there was
Yeah,
some pushback. Okay.
yeah,
And I remember I followed that very closely and
yeah.
actually was talking about it in my act at the time. And I remember what happened was all you heard was the rights of that child to be able to go into whatever bathroom. And I never heard one person acknowledge the right of me, the
Yeah,
father of my
yeah.
child, to not have that person that's of a different gender in the bathroom with my small child. And so I think this gets back for me to the larger issue of like, it's okay to choose to be a patriot and to be American and to believe in your rights and to believe in individual rights and the Constitution. But guess what? It's okay for me to express concern about your exercise of your rights and not be accused of trying to shut you down.
Mm?
This is called
100%.
the nuance of life. This is called we have to come to some negotiated agreement. Like, just like that person has a right to not vaccinate their kid if they don't
Yeah.
want to, I have a right to protect my kid and voice my concern within reason. And I don't. And so what happens sometimes is if someone voices a concern about that person not being vaccinated, the person voicing the concern gets turned into like a Nazi who's trying to shut people down and blah blah
Or
blah. And
whatever.
it's
Yeah.
like, no, it's not like
Yeah.
I think we've lacked the ability to sort of see both sides of the issue and
Oh,
try to
yeah.
come to some reasonable negotiated position on it. Like, I get it. You want to be able to not vaccinate or vaccinate your kid, and you want to be able to make sure your kid, if he is vaccinated, stays safe. How are we going to make that work,
Yeah.
everybody? And I don't think we figured out how to make that work. For
But I
all of
mean,
our education, for
mm,
all of our money, for all of our institutions, for all of our layers of government, for the brilliant doctors and nurses and whatever else and politicians. Today, as I sit here and talk to you, we do not have the ability to marry those two agendas so that they work.
mm.
And that's a concern.
There's even a weirder outer space thing that we get into when you have this conversation because people go to talking about what are rights, okay? And there's
Mm,
even this really crazy divide now, in my opinion, between people that believe there are natural life rights. I mean, it's in the Declaration of Independence. We have
right,
God-given rights that
right.
we must be protected from our government to maintain. And people who believe rights are granted, are given by the government. Rights are something
Mm,
offered by the government, which holy shit, that I don't know how I don't know how we deal with that one
right.
because that is, I mean, it's in the, to me, to talk about governments giving rights is, that's a different country. That's not the one
Yes.
that's not
That's
the
not the, I
declaration. Yeah. But there
completely
are lots of
agree.
people that believe that.
Yeah.
Lots.
So do you, as part of this sort of apology tour that you're doing,
Yeah.
I mean, these are all really important issues. And I think that, we talked about RFK a little bit,
Mm.
and some of that this is something that he feels, as you said, I guess you spoke to him, that this is this is what he's supposed to be doing right now, right? Is this kind of work that he's doing? Um,
He's trying to, in the meantime, he's saying you talk to your pediatrician, you take your vaccines as you're recommended, just to work it out with your doctor. The CDC is not going to get in the way of that. Certainly not going to mandate something, though many
yeah.
schools do mandate. And I just want to remember people, 88 countries around the world have no mandates for childhood vaccines,
Hmm.
including 3 of 5 communist countries.
Hmm.
No mandates for vaccines. It's
Hmm.
considered inhuman.
Hmm.
Scandinavia does not have it. Most of your
Hmm.
Western European countries, China doesn't have it. No mandates. It's
Right.
something that they use education, and they rely on the physicians to encourage people to get the proper vaccines, and certainly those that would endanger other people.
Mm.
So just remember that when you start,
Right.
when people get weird about this, that we are an
Yeah.
outlier in this country, this
Mm.
free country. We have mandates what we put in our children's bodies, including
Mm.
things that make no sense. There are things
Hmm.
that make sense, and there are things that make no sense that we
Yeah.
mandate, and they're trying to get the science worked out and reproduced to figure out how to recommend, what to recommend to everybody with a good scientific basis. Look at, I just keep looking at things like hepatitis B. Why do we give hepatitis B on day one of a child's life? Why do we do
Hmm.
that? Any
Hmm.
thoughts?
Don't know.
I was involved with the research. It was at my residency program. My residency director was very involved in that research when we were developing the hepatitis B vaccine, and we were trying to develop a vaccine for China because they had mother to child transmission problems in China. And they
Hmm.
still have that problem in certain Asian countries. We do not have that problem here. And there is no such thing as a mother who is at risk for hepatitis B not being tested for it before she delivers the baby. And if that baby has hepatitis, if that mom has hepatitis B, trust me, that child gets the hepatitis B vaccine for sure, and it's properly indicated.
Right.
Otherwise, I cannot come up with any reason, any, why you would give hepatitis B to a child, except to say, certainly as an adolescent or young adult, you might want to do it,
Hmm.
particularly if they're going into healthcare or they're around a family system where there's hepatitis. So
Hmm.
if you're an immigrant, recent immigrants from certain Asian countries, okay. But to
Mm.
give it to every baby in the country on day
Yeah.
one, that is, it seems like malpractice to me. I mean, if something goes wrong, why did you do it? Well, because the World Health Organization said I have to. Oh, okay, doctor. Is that you? That's how you don't take into consideration the risk reward for a given child as you're recommending treatments? You just do
Hmm.
what you're told. It's
Hmm.
disgusting. That is disgusting medicine, in my opinion. So
And
there's things like that all through the vaccine schedule that are hard to understand.
hmm.
It's not the measles you mentioned, clear cut. Take the
Mm.
measles vaccine. Take it.
Right. 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 But it's sort of like, where do you see this going? In other words, and by the way, if there's other things you want to apologize for, feel free. I'm not saying you have to. I don't want to
Well,
cut you off on
I
the apology.
apologize to for not. A lot of people suffered during the alpha delta phase. And remember, everybody, again, part of our hysteria is people cannot distinguish alpha and delta with you and I had, which with Omicron. These are different diseases. They're not the same disease. Same virus, different diseases. Alpha and delta was very serious. One of the craziest questions I was asked when I had alpha or delta, whichever one I had, was, were you scared? Were you scared? Why would I be scared? There was a 1% fatality rate for my age group. When a doctor says you have a 1% risk, he or she is telling you it's zero. It's zero. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it.
Right.
99% survival is survival.
Right.
I didn't even
Right.
think about it. I just thought how
Right.
miserable I
Right.
was. That's all.
Right.
Uh,
But I remember too, like, you could understand how people, if you want to label it hysteria or whatever, but like like, these distinctions, to the average person, alpha, delta, this, that,
yeah.
it just is like they hear a word, COVID or whatever the word
Yep.
is, that's whatever, and
Yep.
they hear that people can die from it at certain ages with certain pre-existing conditions. It's asking a lot for people to take all of this information in and then
Yes.
remember, and I could speak to this because I'm not you. You can
Yes.
process this stuff in a way that I will never be able to, and most people won't. You're
Mm,
very experienced at what you do,
mm.
you're very knowledgeable, but like when you're sitting home and you're getting bombarded with this, you do get overwhelmed.
Right. So
And
that was the part.
I
That was
do
the
think it
part
could be,
that bothered me.
we
That
could
was the
have
part.
been better at sort of, I don't know if it would have been even possible if it were to happen again today. I don't know if it would be any better in terms of calm calmly really helping us understand the nuances of this thing.
Yes.
And I
You
don't
need
know how that can happen.
Well, you need government. Panic never makes things better, ever.
Right.
And you
Right.
need a government that helps reduce the panic. I don't care what the situation is.
And why don't you
Not
think they were able to do that?
because they were invested in amplifying it for some reason. And I think that the press started it. I think there's where it started. I really
And
do
why do
think
you think they were amplifying it? Just because it's
the
good numbers, good
good
ratings, good
numbers,
whatever?
good
Yeah.
numbers. That's what I saw. I saw it over and over and over again. And I thought that was the whole story. I didn't know it wasn't the whole story. But you ask yourself a question. Why 10 years earlier was the Obama administration able to prevent a panic? They did a great job. They
Mm.
managed it properly. We got through. I got it. It was awful, killed hundreds of thousands of people, but we got through it without a panic, without destroying people's lives, without destroying people's
Well,
businesses,
how did they
without
keep that from
sacrificing a
becoming
generation. It's insane that we it's so
so?
different. Maybe there was an
So
intermediate response we could have had, right? Like maybe not was what we did, and maybe not as lax as the H1N1, but we did not have to go where we went because 80% of it was bullshit, was
right.
worthless, and
Yeah.
it only hurt people. This is the bottom line. Anything in medicine has always got to take into account risk reward. And Francis Collins himself was on the record saying out loud, we did not contemplate the risk. We only thought about stopping this thing, and we did not contemplate the potential harms. That is malpractice. That is the opposite of how medicine is practiced. Medicine is always risk reward. Always, everything, even walking into my office. What's the risk reward of that? And certainly using a pharmaceutical agent, they're dangerous. They don't make
Mm.
life better, ever.
Mm.
They
Mm.
only are used to treat debilitating or life-threatening illness, period. Anything else, you're only taking risk.
So what do you, if this were to happen today, what do you think the three or four big lessons that we should be taking from the way it was dealt with going forward, including what you're doing personally, which is sort of doing some, you know, self-assessing
Yeah.
and mea culpa and all of that.
Yeah, if somebody saw stuff I said that was outlined, please let me know. I'd love to apologize for it because
Yeah,
I'm looking for those opportunities because I want other
yeah,
people to do the same thing.
yeah. And I
I would
just,
say the thing that was shut down that is a feature of the scientific and clinical process that send things completely into outer space was shutting down discourse and free speech. It was shut
Mhm,
down.
mhm,
And that is how you get into very dangerous cultish thinking in medicine.
mhm,
There's always alternative opinions. There's always, you must examine the outlying opinions and see what is, what you're doing and where you might be deluded in what you're thinking. It is so dangerous when alternative ideas are not taken into account. It's just the opposite of, I mean, in medicine, we every week have morbidity and mortality reports where we bring in a case and we beat the shit out of each other for the choices we made, to learn about, to make better choices, to do it differently, because there's always alternative opinions for everything
mhm,
in medicine. And
mhm.
when you hear just one thing and thus saith the Lord, oh my God,
Right.
that's
And
that's so scary to me.
yeah, and I think what has to happen too is we have to always be conscious that we're living in a society with other human beings that have a different personal agenda, set of priorities. And so
Mhm.
what I do does have some effect on you and this person and that person and that person. And so I do think that at some point in this episode, people started to just think about what was best for them and not for
Right.
them and others around them. And I
So
mean, on both sides of that debate, whether to get a vaccination or not get
yeah,
a vaccination,
yeah.
okay? Like this, I have no political agenda in this conversation, right? I think that's actually part of the problem. It's just sort of, I think what happens in life, and particularly was amplified during this whole episode, was people's inability to have some empathy for others around them in their position and understand that the way you're living your life has some effect on the way another person is living their life, right? Like I'm not into guns. It's not my thing.
Yeah.
I don't like to hunt. I think guns is your right. God bless you. I'm not
Yeah.
one of these people that is sort of a, if I don't want it, then you shouldn't have it.
Right.
That's not what
That's
this
a
country
weird
is based
impulse.
in.
That's a weird impulse, isn't it?
But that's kind of where we've gotten to, in my opinion, this is a larger conversation why I wanted to have all of this with you is
Mm.
like that's where we are in society right now. And
Hmm.
that's where we are in a bad way. Like if I don't
Right.
want it, you shouldn't have it. Like
Right.
somebody that I know came out this whole Saudi Arabia thing, right? First it was with Live Golf, and then there was some comedians performing for
Yeah.
the Saudi Arabia,
Riyadh.
one come out and they're like and just lambasted these comedians like
Yep.
badly lambasted, and I'm like, oh, okay. And they did the same thing with the Live Golf people. Remember, how
Hmm.
dare you go take
Hmm.
their money? So you know what my response to that is? Okay. Well, if you're going to voice that amount of that level of protestation to the point where it's hostile, you need to basically living in a cave wearing a fig leaf
Yeah.
because you need to first, if you're going to ask someone to boycott, then you need to stop using Saudi oil.
Hmm.
Don't drive a car, don't heat
Hmm.
your house, don't wear
Hmm.
clothes. But this is
Yeah.
where we are now. Like,
Right.
I don't like it, Drew. So if I don't like it, you shouldn't like it. And if you like it, then you're fucked up and there's something wrong with you.
Right.
And that is what happened with it's happened with COVID, with vaccines,
Yeah.
with Saudi money. It's all across the board. And that's the problem in the
Yeah.
country right now, I think.
So back to my apologies. So because I was very concerned, I could tell there was no risk reward analysis going on, and I was concerned that panic was going to harm people, that we were going to do exactly what we did. We were going to hurt tons of people with our reactions to this. I was accused of wanting to kill people with the virus. You want people to
Yeah.
die. You don't
Right.
care.
Right.
No, I do care. Because I care, that's why I'm speaking up. I care
Right.
about what we're doing here in response to this virus. It's going to be worse than the virus. And
Mm.
I kept saying, it's a bad virus. Listen to the CDC. Let's get them through.
You did. I
Don't
remember you
panic
saying
because
that.
that's harmful. And the
Mm.
same thing with the vaccine. A lot of people caught on early that the vaccine didn't improve transmissibility, didn't change transmission. So they didn't want the vaccine. You don't care about other people. You won't take the vaccine because you don't care. It's like, no,
Right.
I've read the data. It doesn't help. So I choose not to take it. This
Right.
mind reading and this vilifying other people
Yeah.
it just has to stop. It's
Yeah.
narcissistic. It is mob behavior. It's how scapegoating gets going. It's how envy is evolved and is one of the most horrific qualities of the human being. And we
That's,
must, every religion on earth has injunctions against this behavior, and we've been indulging in it. We
yeah.
must stop.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that if we don't deal with that at the root cause, this is just going to continue,
Agreed.
and it's pervasive throughout society, whether it's medicine or something else or politics or First Amendment, right? Like, it's the Kimmel suspension, right? Like, okay, you could not like what he said,
Mm-hmm.
but what about the 2 million people or plus that like him?
Mm-hmm.
Because what happened in that moment? Guess what ruled the day? The loudest voice in the room. And
Well,
whenever that
but
happens,
but
that's dangerous.
it's even deeper. Like it's the panic on behalf of his employers, right? This is back to panic again.
Yeah.
This is the panic. I have to do something. No, you don't.
Right.
You can show some courage and do nothing.
Right.
The
Right. You know what?
courage is in short supply,
Right.
guys. Courage.
Right.
Think about
Right.
courage. Defend freedom. Do it. Be courageous.
The market's efficient. Let the viewer
Perfectly
decide.
effective.
Someone asked me in the interview I did about this, do you think late night's too political? I said, well, first of all, two is a subjective term, and who has a right to define that? You know who has a right to define that? The viewer,
The
by not
market.
watching. And you'll know if it's too political because a show's ratings will plummet to the point where there's nobody watching and they'll get canceled. That's how the market's supposed to work.
Paul's training. His training coming through. The invisible hand, everybody. The invisible hand takes care of everything.
Exactly.
It does. The invisible
So
hand of the market.
it is, and I think that that goes across the board. Back,
I
you know,
agree.
turning
I
to
agree,
what we've been talking
but you
about.
can't lock it down. You can't artificially put stuff on top of it, and that's where the invisible hand gets padlocked, and
Yeah,
that's how things get into trouble.
exactly. Listen, I'm so glad we did this,
Me
and
too.
we're going to do it again before 6 years
Yeah,
from now.
please, please.
No,
And
well,
you know what
I
we
think
should
we
do?
should just have
See
these
what
conversations on a
yeah,
regular basis.
maybe see I would, you know, what I would love to do is to see how your audience reacts, and if they have specific things that we got wrong or you need me to apologize for. Let's
Hmm.
really put this into action, and let's
Absolutely.
let's do a follow-up where we look at the criticisms and and
Yeah,
what we got right, what
we'll
we got
sort
wrong,
of
and kind of
we'll get some comments so we can respond
yeah,
to them. But I
yeah,
think that this is good for you, but I think it's good for society. I think it sends beyond sort of the specific issue of COVID and vaccines or whatever. It sends a bigger, and I would say maybe even more important message of like, we need to take the temperature down, and one way to do that is to doing what you're doing today, which is to self-assess, show some humility, admit maybe that there were some mistakes made, because that's how we get better as a society, we get
yeah.
better as human beings.
And
So I really,
stop thinking that this person's bad because they don't agree with you or they have sinister intentions. I don't
that's
meet
right.
those people. I mean, I'm sure they're out there, to be fair,
Right.
but the
Right.
reality is the vast majority
Yeah.
wants to thrive. They want their people around them to thrive. They want their neighbors and their
Right.
community. They want people to thrive.
Right.
That's what we all want.
And I think the challenge for society in general, and I mean that with a capital S,
Mm,
uh, is to find ways to get people with competing interests to compromise and live together and
mm.
coexist. And maybe each side has to sort of take a little bit off of what they want,
Oh,
right?
sure.
Like, right. So if you
Yeah.
want 10 out of 10, maybe live with 8 out
Yeah.
of 10, and
Yeah.
you live with 8 out of 10, and we can coexist.
Yeah.
Because we're
Yeah.
never going to be a society where everybody's on board and wants everything to sort of work out in a very common fashion.
Mm,
So I think if we can get there, and I think these kind of conversations will help toward that, and the thing that we talked about a little bit about sort of my talking about being the guy in the middle. I'm doing a lot of conversations and shows with that perspective, and my show
good.
Permission to Speak too.
Great.
It's like I do think that there are people, a lot of people like us in the middle, not
Oh, yeah.
necessarily politically,
Most.
but sort of just don't want to be all the way on this side or that side,
Yeah.
extreme voices screaming at each other,
Yeah.
and really do want to find some middle ground. And so I think it goes big way toward that. So
And I don't see
um
sinister intent in really almost anybody I talk to. I see
no.
weird impulses, like you said, wanting to tell other people how to live. That's weird to me, but okay, I want to understand it.
Yeah, I don't think inherently people are sinister. I think what happens is it's a toxic combination of sort of a very high stakes issue that
Mm.
then gets either over dramatized by media, by politicians or whatever. It becomes this
Well,
toxic sort
you
of
know what?
combination,
To your
and then
point,
people seem
I,
irrational, but they're
I
really
do
not.
worry that there are sinister influences afoot. I do worry about
Oh
that,
yeah,
that people are being manipulated and stuff, and somebody's benefiting from it somewhere or some system or something. But
yeah,
that I worry about, but I don't worry about the citizens. I don't worry about
no.
us.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Dr. Drew, so great to have you on. So great that we were able to kind of, hit on this and get back to this. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you were able to kind of express what you wanted to express. And I applaud you for the apologies.
All good. I've got many more to come, I'm sure. So I look forward to that. So,
All
and thank you for
right.
the bacon sandwich yesterday. It was good.
You got it, man. Absolutely. Mayo on the side. We got you. Diet Coke. You're good. All right. Dr.
All
Drew,
right.
his show on X, Rumble, and YouTube. You can
Yep.
check it out weekly.
Thank you.
Take care.